Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, where we discuss all the news in the world of basketball. My name is Ben Brown, back in the studio today on a wet, muggy, windy Friday. I'm sure Klay Thompson not going to be too happy about the weather today. Remember a few days ago, Klay did say he felt like he was shooting a lot better because the weather was nice and it wasn't so rainy and windy like we had this winter, but, can't stay like that forever, Klay. So, weather not doing too good here in Sacramento, so if you're in the area, drive safely. Also, weather's pretty bad back east. We have the Masters currently going on in Georgia, and the weather's really, really windy out there right now. So, if you're in a place with unfortunate weather climate, please be safe. But nevertheless, we are talking basketball here, so weather not a big factor when you're playing indoors in a stadium, of course. So, no big deal there. It's going to be a very, very action-packed, fun-filled show for you planned today. As always, we're going to be talking about the NBA games from last night. We are winding down here. Every team about 3 or 4 games left, technically, till the end of the season. So we have a lot of playoff seeding still to determine. I mean, in the East, the Heat are literally out of playoffs right now. They're only 2 games back of the number 5 seed. That's how tight it is in the Eastern Conference at the bottom half there. In the West, we have all but one playoff spot up for grabs. That's number 8 between the Trailblazers and the Nuggets. So we'll do an updated standings list at the end of the first segment here. But we're just going to talk some sports, talk some games, talk some performances. Look ahead to tonight, because tonight could very well be the night that Russell Westbrook eclipses that historic mark. He could not only average a triple-double for the season tonight, he does need 6 assists, and he also needs 1 triple-double to have 42 triple-doubles this season, which is the most all-time in one season. Of course, he's tied with Oscar Robertson right now. So we'll preview a little bit of that game. They are playing the Suns. I do believe Russ will get both the triple-double average as well as a triple-double in general tonight. And I'll give you some stats on that as to why. But first, let's talk about the NBA from last night. Jimmy Butler's triple-double, 19 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, was very, very crucial in the Bulls' 102-90 victory over the Philadelphia 76ers. Of course, the Bulls currently in the 7th seed right now, tied for the 7th seed. But they're only half a game out of the playoffs. So very, very important that the Bulls continue to play well. Had a lot of expectations coming into the season with the additions of Dwayne Wade and Rajon Rondo, but it has not really worked out for them. But Dwayne Wade could be returning as early as tomorrow. Remember, it looks like he was going to be out the rest of the year with that elbow injury, but he might be returning as early as tomorrow, which would be really, really huge and crucial for the Bulls' playoff chances. The Bulls currently at 39-40, so you're looking at 3 games left. I mean, if you win 2 of them, you're going to be good and you're going to be in. So really, really crucial that the Bulls finish strong if they want to keep that playoff spot that they're in right now. A 102-90 victory over the Sixers is a good way to start, though. The Nets have been kind of hot on fire, but they do not get it done yesterday against the Orlando Magic. The Magic come out on top 115-107. Elfrid Payton, 22 points and 11 assists. And Jeremy Lin had 32 points in the loss for the Brooklyn Nets. The Pacers defeat the Milwaukee Bucks 104-89. Paul George had 23 points and 10 rebounds. Giannis Antetokounmpo had 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists for the Bucks. Bucks currently the 6th seed right now in the East. The Pacers are the 8th seed right now. So tough games. Obviously, both teams really going for it. Bucks 40-39, Pacers 39-40. So there's only a 1-game difference there. The Knicks and the Wizards met last night at the Garden, and the Wizards come out on top 106-103. John Wall 24 points and 8 assists in the victory for them. Carmelo Anthony in the loss did have 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. The return of Brandon Knight to the Knicks this season, he did mention after the game that he felt like the fact that Carmelo Anthony was definitely rumored of being traded and everything that happened with Phil Jackson definitely took a toll on the team and really Melo in general. And you got to say he's kind of right on that. The Knicks, I guess you can say, had some better expectations this season. Not necessarily would have competed, but you would have thought they'd be a lot better than 30-49 when you have Kristaps Porzingis another year in the system. You bring in Derrick Rose, you bring in Joakim Noah, you already have Carmelo Anthony. You would have thought they'd be a lot better than they are right now. But it has not really worked out for them this whole entire season. The Knicks are basically a dumpster fire, and you got to think that what Brandon Jennings said was right, that the fact that he was rumored of being traded and Phil Jackson, very, very outlandish comments, definitely had an effect on the team and Carmelo Anthony in general, and you can really, really see that from the Knicks. They've just really, really been poor all year long, and was not surprised they lost last night to the Wizards. Wizards are very, very solid. They're currently tied with the Raptors for the number 3 seed. They have the same exact record, 48-31. So those last few games will be really key because you'd much rather go up against possibly Boston as opposed to Cleveland in that second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. I'm assuming you do get there. So that's going to be really important to look at. But Toronto's playing really well without Kyle Lowry. I've been really surprised. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. So Raptors playing really, really well. But they did not play last night, so let's continue on. The Celtics take a major L last night as they lose to the Hawks, 123-116. Paul Millsap had 26 points and 12 rebounds. Isaiah Thomas, 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists in the loss last night for the Celtics. And this was a really, really big loss for the Celtics because you will remember they did lose on Wednesday to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that put them a game behind them. But really, it was kind of like 2 games behind them because they had the tiebreaker edge for winning the head-to-head matchup. And now the Celtics lose again last night to the Hawks. The Hawks are a good team. Hawks are 5th in the East right now. But that's a big loss for the Celtics. They're 1.5 games back now of Cleveland. If Cleveland simply wins another game or the Celtics lose another game, then Cleveland's going to have the number 1 seed wrapped up in the Eastern Conference. And that's really big for them, seeing as how they took, in my eyes, basically the last month and a half of the season off and didn't really play well. The Cavs have won 4 in a row now, and that victory over the Celtics was kind of like a stamp on that going into the playoffs, that they're really starting to play well and really got their mindset right. So for the Celtics to drop that game last night to the Hawks was really, really, I don't want to say unexpected because the Hawks are a good team, like I said, but really, really unfortunate for their chances of trying to capture that number 1 seed. It's just not going to happen now. The Cavs are going to have the number 1 seed, so that's a big loss for the Celtics last night. And then the last game on the schedule was the Trailblazers against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Trailblazers won that game 105-98. Andrew Wiggins had 36 points and 8 rebounds in a loss for the T-Wolves, and Alan Crabb, the young man from Cal, had 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. The Blazers are currently the number 8 seed in the Western Conference. They have a 1.5 game lead over the Denver Nuggets. Those are the only 2 teams fighting for that last playoff spot in the West. So let's look at some of the standings right now. The Cavs, of course, are 1.5 games up over Boston. You have Toronto and you have Washington tied for the 3-4. They're 3.5 games back of the Cavs. Number 5 is the Hawks. They have a half-game lead over the Bucks, who have a game lead over both the Bulls and the Pacers. But then you have the Heat, just half a game back right now at 38-40. Given how they started, they were 9-23 at one point. Just to even say that they're in the playoff races is absolutely absurd and crazy. So credit to Eric Spoelstra and some of his players like Goran Dragic and Hassan Whiteside because they really have turned their season around. And I hope they get into the playoffs. That'd be fun to see LeBron go up against his former team again in the postseason. But I'd also love to see the Pacers battle the Cavs. Right now, that's the 1-8 matchup. Lance Stevenson again against LeBron James. That'd be fantastic and good money and good TV to watch there. In the West, of course, the Warriors have the number 1 seed, and the whole NBA wraps up at 65-14. The Spurs are second at 60-18. The Rockets are third at 53-25. The Jazz are in fourth right now. They have a half-game lead over the Clippers. Then you have the Thunder. They're 2.5 back of the Clippers, so you would imagine that the Thunder are not going anywhere. They're going to be in that 6th seed. It's a battle between 4 and 5 for the Jazz and Clippers. The Grizzlies are firmly locked into the 7th seed, and then you have the Blazers who are 3 games back. So it's just basically if the Clippers and Jazz can flop, and then if the Portland Trail Blazers and Nuggets, whoever gets in there. So that will take us to tonight when we'll look at some of the games here on the NBA calendar for Friday, April 7th. We have the Cavs in action taking on the Hawks. The Heat will be in Toronto to take on the Raptors. The Knicks will be in Memphis taking on the Grizzlies. The Rockets will host the Detroit Pistons. The battle in Texas, the Mavericks take on the Spurs. We have the Nuggets taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. The Jazz will be hosting the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Lakers will be at home against the Kings, which ought to be a tank fest. I mean, both these teams just absolutely trying to tank as much as they can. Remember, the Lakers, they have a top 3 protected pick. So if they do not land within the top 3 in the draft lottery, then their pick goes to the Philadelphia 76ers. So they're trying to lose literally every game they can. And remember, a couple of nights ago, they did beat the San Antonio Spurs. So the Kings trying to do the same thing, though. You know, the Kings could potentially have 2 top 10 picks. They, of course, have the Pelicans pick, which is going to be a lottery pick because the Pelicans are eliminated from the playoffs. So, but they could also swap. You know, I mean, if they get up in the top 3, then that Pelicans pick is protected for them. So the Pelicans trying to lose every game they can now to try and get as high of a chance of keeping their pick. So it's really just going to be a tank fest. And then the last game on the schedule is the Phoenix Suns hosting Russell Westbrook and the OKC Thunder. I really think it's a matter of when and not if Russell Westbrook gets his triple-double average tonight and records his triple-double tonight. Remember, the Phoenix Suns, same thing. They're trying to lose as many games as they can right now. They're starting the youngest starting 5 in NBA history. They're resting some of their players to allow lesser-known players to even play in the game, which is just crazy to think. So I think this is a sure lock that Westbrook's getting a triple-double tonight. This season against the Suns, Russell Westbrook has averaged 41 points, 13 rebounds, and 13 assists. Remember, he needs 6 assists to average a triple-double for the rest of the season if he doesn't even play anymore. And then he needs 1 triple-double to get 42 in a season. He was 1 rebound short the other night, you'll remember. I think he gets it tonight against the Suns because the Suns, quite honestly, are just trying to lose games. They're simply trying to lose games. And Russell Westbrook has really played well against them this season. So I do expect Russ to get history tonight and get his 42nd triple-double this season and get his 6 assists to average a triple-double, of course. We'll take our first break here of the show. After the break, we're going to talk about some college basketball news. Lavar Ball is at it again, except this time I think he kind of went a little too far. We have a couple of guys declaring for the NBA draft as well. We'll talk about their draft status and what I expect from them in the league coming up next at the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We are talking some college hoops. Games are over, but players are moving on. A couple of them going to the NBA. First off, from Kentucky, sophomore guard Isaiah Briscoe. He has declared for the NBA draft, and he has also hired an agent He's the fourth player this season from Kentucky to declare for the NBA draft. He joins Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, and Bam Adebayo. The sophomore guard this season averaged about 10 points, but throughout his 2 years there, he started a lot of games, started 69 games. He averaged 12 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. He is projected to be a second-round pick, so I was a little surprised that Isaiah Briscoe did declare for the NBA draft, given the fact that he would be a second-round pick. I mean, there's been exceptions, people who are second-round picks that make it big, but for the most part, a second-round pick in the NBA draft is really basically not even getting you on the team a lot of times. You're looking at getting in the D-League possibly, definitely a run maybe in the Summer League, but not really much after that. So I was a little surprised by the fact that he would declare. But I have said this, you know what I mean? And I'll give a couple examples. Number one is going to be Ivan Rabb this season from Cal, and then maybe Jared Sullinger a few years ago from Ohio State. I've always said this. If you go back to school when you had a great season, then it's probably a bad decision. Going back to school is obviously great. I'm all for that. But as far as your draft status goes, going back to school gives teams, players, coaches, general managers another year to figure out what's wrong with you. You know what I mean? Ivan Rabb last season at Cal as a freshman, if he would have come out, he would have probably been a lottery pick. This year, you're looking at maybe late first round, early second round with Rabb. A couple of years ago with Jared Sullinger at Ohio State. Comes out as a freshman, probably would have been a top 5 pick. Comes out as a sophomore, not so much, mid-first round. So I feel like you kind of need to strike while the iron's hot as far as going out. And for Briscoe, could he develop more and become a better player? Yeah, sure. But he's also another year into the system, another year past what the NBA wants, because they want 19, 20-year-old kids. Looking at graduating, going to be 21, 22, depending on your junior, senior year. So coming back gives teams and GMs another reason to figure out why you're still in college and another year past what your prime could be and another year into that NBA system. You're looking at, look at Karl Anthony Towns. The dude's 20, 21 years old. It's only his second year in the league, and he's already tearing it up. Briscoe is only a year younger than him, and he's just now coming into the league. So the NBA wants these young guys with tons of potential. So not really surprised Briscoe came out for that reason, but at the same time, only a second-round pick. Didn't really get much shine this year, given how good De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk were. Probably would have got a lot more next season had he come back for his junior year. But nevertheless, Isaiah Briscoe does become the fourth player from Kentucky to go to the NBA draft this year. We got another guy declaring for the draft, and that will hire an agent, and that's another sophomore from Duke. We have shooting guard Luke Kennard. This season, he led the Blue Devils in scoring. He averaged 19.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, and about 3 assists. Of course, he was expected to come off the bench, but he started a lot of games this season, given injuries and on-the-court incidents to Grayson Allen, people like Jason Tatum and Harry Giles and Marquez Bolden as well. So Kennard had a pretty good season. He's a lefty, nice little shooter, good spot shooter. Duke's losing a lot of guys. They already lost Tatum and Giles to the draft. You're losing Luke Kennard now. You have Emil Jefferson and Matt Jones who are graduating. Potentially, you could lose Grayson Allen, although I do believe that Allen will return for his senior year at Duke, given the fact that he simply hurt his draft status this season with the tripping incidents and the tantrums and everything. He really, really hurt his draft stock this season. So I would imagine that Grayson Allen would come back for his senior year because, what else do you have? You don't really have much. Another guy, Grayson Allen, probably should have come out as a sophomore. Would have been probably a mid-first rounder. Now you're looking at, depending on how GMs view him as a player, might not even be drafted if he does declare this season. So probably would come back for his senior year. I would sort of advise him to do that. I think that's probably the best route to go. But nevertheless, we do have Luke Kennard declaring for the draft. I was a little surprised. I would have thought he would have maybe stayed one more year. Really broke out this season, so I guess got to strike while the iron's hot. But I would have thought next season he really would have formed a really good backcourt with Allen had they have stayed. Well, Kennard's gone, but maybe we'll see if Allen stays. But now Duke losing a lot of guys as well. They already lost Giles and Tatum, as I mentioned, losing Emil Jefferson and Matt Jones. Now Kennard as well. Duke kind of turning that chapter a little bit. Coach K is finally deciding to go with a lot of these guys that are going to be one and done as opposed to trying to graduate players like he used to. Kind of started with Kyrie. You had Kyrie Irving. You brought in Jahlil Okafor. Now you have people like Jason Tatum, Harry Giles. Duke's always been great, but it seems like they always go for the guys that they know are going to graduate and be around for a while, as opposed to the one-and-done sort of players. But Duke's changing that chapter now. So those are the couple of guys that are going to be coming out of the draft. The draft ought to be really, really good and exciting coming this upcoming summer. Of course, I want to figure out what happens with the draft lottery. That'll tell a lot. We have a lot of teams tanking because the whole protected, trying to get the best pick they can, everything situation. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the draft lottery coming up in a couple of weeks come playoff time. But real quick before we end the segment, we'll talk about one more thing, and that is Lavar Ball, the outspoken Lavar Ball, father of Lonzo, LiAngelo, and LaMelo. So Lonzo going to the NBA, LiAngelo getting ready to go to UCLA, and then LaMelo from Chino Hills High School. So Lavar Ball, definitely outspoken. He said something about UCLA's Sweet 16 loss and about Steve Alford. And he said the reason they lost to Kentucky in the Sweet 16 was because there's 3 white guys that were starting, and the foot speed is just too slow. This is what he told the Southern California News Group. Of course, he's talking about TJ Leaf, Bryce Alford, and Thomas Welsh, the big 7-footer. So he's definitely not a guy that's afraid to speak his mind. I think he maybe crossed the line a little bit here because UCLA were fantastic. Look at these guys. TJ Leaf is declaring for the draft. He's going to be probably a mid-first round pick. You have Bryce Alford, who was just dynamic this year, a great three-point shooter, good off the dribble, a good spot shooter. Then you have Thomas Welsh inside, who is 7 foot tall, definitely takes up a lot of space. He and Leaf together formed a pretty good, I guess you could say, down of the middle of the front court. Good 4-5, so that was really good. And UCLA were a great team this year. They lost to Kentucky, who, another great team, could have honestly gotten to the Elite Eight, lost at the buzzer, of course. I'm sorry, at the Final Four. Lost, of course, at the buzzer to North Carolina by Luka May's shot. It's not like they lost to just a bad team. I don't think you can really blame it on the fact that you had 3 white guys playing and that the foot speed was slower. You look at the demographic of the NBA, you have primarily black players, a lot of Europeans as well. You do have some white guys in there that are still battling Kevin Love. I mean, it's not like that the dynamics are totally different. I feel like he kind of crossed the line here a little bit, given the fact as well that his son is mixed. Their kids are interracial. So are you kind of calling out your own family in that regard too? Because he's part of that as well. I feel like he's definitely, he's got us all fooled. He's got us talking about him, LaVar Ball. He's doing what he wants. He's trying to build up the baller brand, and I don't agree with these comments. I think he really, really crossed the line. I don't think it's very fair to these guys because this team and these players are really, really talented. Leaf and Alford and Welsh are really, really talented, and I don't think you can blame the loss on those guys. It's a team effort. Lonzo played terrible in that Sweet 16 game. He got lit up by De'Aaron Fox for 39 points. Lonzo only scored 10. So if anything, you can maybe say he didn't really do his part on the offensive side and the defensive side. I don't think that's very, very fair to say that it's on these. And it kind of brings up a big racial issue. That's definitely not a good thing to do. So I don't agree with you, LaVar, but I don't really agree with a lot of things you do. So I don't see what else is new. But anyways, we're going to take our last break here on the show. We're going to talk about some NBA news after the break before we say goodbye for the weekend. We're talking about Kevin Durant returning tomorrow for the Warriors. How will he do? What would I expect him to do? Talk about the NBA salary cap, what is projected to be at for next season, and the NBA Board of Governors going to be meeting about the whole idea of resting healthy players. So we'll talk about all that coming up next year at the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
So we are back here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Some breaking news into the show really quickly. Wichita State has been unanimously voted in to join the AAC conference starting next season. Of course, the American Athletic Conference, you have colleges like Cincinnati, SMU, UConn. Wichita State is joining that at the start of next season for basketball, which is great. Wichita State were really that last mid-major to get into a bigger program. You had teams like Butler and Creighton go to the Big East. You have VCU in the A-10, which is not bad. I mean, you have Dayton in the A-10. You had Rhode Island this year. So it's not a great conference, the A-10, but it's a decent conference. Wichita State were like that last mid-major left to not be in a bigger conference. They were in the Missouri Valley Conference, and now they're, of course, in the AAC, which is great. SMU were a good team, although they got bounced in the first round by USC. Cincinnati, of course, made a run there. So it was nice to see that definitely Wichita State getting in there. They were deserving of it. I think they'll have a great team next year. We talked about them with upcoming odds for next season. They'll probably be a top 10 team to start the season, honestly. So that's good to see Wichita State in there and the AAC starting next year. Talk about some basketball news here. Kevin Durant planning on returning barring a setback today in practice tomorrow against the New Orleans Pelicans. Durant has been practicing, doing some scrimmages, 2-on-2s, 3-on-3s, 4-on-4s during the Warriors practice, and he's been cleared by the team doctors to return to full practices. Of course, KD has missed the last 19 games for the Warriors since they lost him against the Wizards on February 28th to a grade 2 left MCL sprain and tibial bone bruise in his knee. So KD coming back. The Warriors are on fire. They're en fuego. They're on that 12-game winning streak. Do they really need Kevin Durant? Well, I mean, come playoff time, he's a big addition, no pun intended, given that he's 6'10". He's like the second or third best player in the world, depending on how you look at him. But they're playing well without him, so how could this mess up the team chemistry? Well, they're getting him back now, so they have a few games to sort of get him up to speed a little bit, get his finesse level back up, and move him back in the starting lineup come the postseason. You're looking at probably Portland in the first round or the 8th seed right now. They're a game and a half up on Denver. So, I mean, either Portland or Denver in the first round, with or without Durant, the Warriors should be fine. But you're obviously going to want him in there. I mean, he's KD. He's one of the best players in the world. So if you sort of get him a little feel of everything, get him up to speed a little bit, I think that'd be fine. I think he'll be okay. They're going to probably bring him off the bench, limit his minutes, just kind of get him back in the flow of things. Come playoff time, they'll be good to go. For me, I would have hoped that he could maybe return a week earlier if I was the Warriors. That way you could work on getting him up to speed now as opposed to maybe the start of the first round of the playoffs, because those games really count. You know, if something goes wrong, you maybe lose a couple of games. You play more games than you're expected to against a team like Portland. You should still beat them, but it could give you maybe a little bit of a tiredness going into the next round. You're looking at, depending on who you play, 4-5 matchup. Maybe a team like the Jazz or the Clippers. Could be a tougher out, and then obviously you're looking at the Spurs or the Rockets, presumably in the Western Conference Finals, and whomever comes out of the East, whether it be the Celtics or the Cavs. I believe it'll be the Cavs, but so that could be a little tougher as opposed to maybe a week ago, but they don't really have a choice in that. So KD returning tomorrow. Hopefully he can stay healthy. That'd be great. I want to see the Warriors full strength in the postseason, see what they can really do this year with KD. Because this is what it's all about. You know, it's great in the regular season. Everything's building up to the postseason. But you bring in a guy like Durant to see what he'll do in the postseason and try to win you championships. So hopefully he'll stay healthy. Let's talk about the NBA salary cap for next season. According to Adrian Wojnarowski of The Vertical and Yahoo Sports, the salary cap is expected to go up to $101 million. This year it was at $94.1 million. So you're looking at about a $7 million increase. And then even going up next year, you could look at it even going higher from 101. So, I mean, there's a lot of money going around, guys. A lot of money. Think about some of the contracts we had this year. Timofey Mozgov, for example, 4 years, $64 million deal. With the NBA salary cap, you literally have to use a certain percentage of it. You can't just not use it. So you're going to be having to give players a ton of money. Now, the salary cap's even going up higher for next season. It's a good time to be a free agent in the NBA, given the fact that you have guaranteed contracts and teams have to pay you no matter what. So they're going to have to overpay you because they have to use all of that salary cap. Well, not all of it, but the majority of it. So they're going to have to use that salary cap. So it's a good time to be an NBA free agent. Free agency this summer ought to be wild in the NBA. And, of course, we'll break it down here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. The last bit of news before we close the show for the week is the Board of Governors are looking to address resting healthy players trend at its next meeting. Of course, the last couple weeks of the season, we've been really, really big on the whole resting players. The Cavs did it. But it's not just about them. It's about kind of teams resting players for tanking issues now, trying to get the worst records as they can. Because, quite honestly, they're trying to get as best lottery balls they can and get some of these top picks. We talked about the Lakers. If they don't get in the top 3 picks, then they lose their pick to Philly. So they're trying to lose every game possible to make sure that they keep their draft pick for this season. So they're going to rest some of their best players. Timofey Mozgov, I just talked about him. He got shut down for the rest of the season, even though he's not injured at all. So this is a big-time issue, not necessarily with resting good players in big games, but for resting players for teams tanking. So it's a big issue I think they do need to address and figure out what they can do. But the thing is, what simply can you do? Maybe put some sort of clause in there that if a guy is healthy, you have to at least play him or have him active. But then you don't even have to play him. You could have him start and then sit him down. It's really tough to figure out what teams can do. But I do hate the whole issue, and I just really think it's all bad for the game and for the average fan. So for me, you got to limit the season. There's just too many games, too many meaningless games, but that's not going anywhere. The owners aren't going to take any cuts. The players aren't going to take any cuts. There's too much money involved to let that happen either. So we'll see what happens, but I don't really think anything's going to come out of this. That's going to be it for today, guys. Of course, my name is Ben Brown, and to thank you once again for listening here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Have a good day, have a good weekend, and we'll be back on Monday talking all things basketball here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.